So today is our second Halloween episode. I know it's not maybe a conventional choice, but it's been fan requested a lot. It's Black Swan. We had little disagreements here about whether that's a classic scary movie. It does make me yell, so I think that qualifies it. So I guess
I'm the dissenter here. I know it's psychological horror, but to me, it's not a horror movie. But you know, it's classified as psychological horror, so the girls are right and I'm wrong. So we'll
take
start
to the
there.
streets, fan.
Yeah.
And get on our social medias and just tell Ben he's wrong.
Yeah,
that
please.
this is a scary movie.
He needs to hear it on a consistent basis.
Also, while you're in social media, please take a second and give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. These ratings and reviews go very, very far in getting us out there and heard by other people. So please take a second to give us a rating, a review, a like on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everything.
Yeah, and if you requested this movie in particular, let us know. Like, give us a review and let us know what you think of what we say about it. Because this is one that's been, I think, asked for since the dawn of the podcast. It's something I think we've all thought about doing since the beginning. Yeah. Because it's one of those movies that's clearly about mental health. Like, something is going on with the protagonist that people are like, what the hell? I think when they watch it. So in this episode, we're going to be talking entirely about the Natalie Portman character, Nina, and kind of her degradation or regression or deterioration, I guess, as the movie progresses. We're going to be touching specifically on the psychosis symptoms we see in the movie. We'll talk a little bit about schizophrenia and if she's fitting the symptoms for that. We'll also be talking about the external factors that go on with this movie, specifically her home, like her relationship with her mom and that weirdness. And then, and then the environmental factors of also her profession, being in a job that's very competitive and image oriented and subjective, and how that
perfection based.
Yes, and how that impacts her mental health. This is one I think I don't know if I want to say up front that it might be a little messier. I think there's so much going on in this movie that in order for us to kind of tackle it all, it might be a little all over the place. Just also because so many pieces of this movie impact each other. The Venn diagram of this movie is many circles with a lot of intersections.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're totally right.
So do you want to give a brief synopsis of this movie?
Sure. So in Black Swan, we see we're following a ballerina. She's a young woman who is she's just at the start of her ascendancy to being a star.
Like a principal dancer, I think is what they're called.
Yeah, I think so.
The prima ballerina, right?
I don't know if they still use that term, but
I don't know if they do
principal
either.
dancer.
Sure, we'll use
Do
that
I
term.
watch a lot of New York City Ballet YouTube videos to relax? Yes, I do.
Yeah, she does. She loves it.
So it is principal dancer. And she's taking it kind of from the previous, prima ballerina, Winona Ryder's character.
Right. And we see that process where Nina is given the role to get the principal lead for the start of the new season, and the previous principal dancer, the previous lead, the face of the company, is
kiboshed,
given her exit, her premature retirement, if you will. And as we go through the movie, we begin to see Nina's descent into psychosis, or in psychological terms, the onset of her symptoms, we watch her start to devolve deeper into psychosis, become more paranoid, start to show more of her skin-picking symptoms, as well as seeing her eating disorder and even some drug use. And kind of the toll that the stress of the job, in addition to the combination of all of those factors, has on her psychological state, until we reach the conclusion of the film where she accidentally kills herself.
Yeah, it's like it is. Yeah, she gets this prime role in the ballet. At the simultaneously, this newer element, this other dancer Lily comes in, who's kind of her foil, and we also see sort of the the formation and unraveling of that relationship as well, and also her relationship with her mom, who is all right. We can get into it. So basically, the psychosis part. I think the part that I assume most people who requested the video, that's what they notice when it comes to thinking of this movie with psychology. So in terms of psychosis symptoms, what are we seeing with Nina?
I think it's pretty clear that we're seeing her hallucinate. She's definitely seeing things that may or may not be there. I think she's having full-on delusions.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if we've done this in a while, but what's the difference between a delusion and a hallucination?
A hallucination is a perceived sensory event, which would be sight, sound, touch, feel, or scent. Mm-hmm. And then a delusion is a belief.
Yeah, it's almost like a fantasy almost, or like an idea of what's going on around you. So for Nina, I think the delusion we see most clearly here is this idea that, I guess, Lily, or like people are out to get her, kind of. Like she has this delusion throughout the movie that people are writing horror on the bathroom mirror, that people are looking at her, that people are talking about her, that Lily is trying to take her part, like when she like goes to the director, the ballet director, and she's like, it can be anybody but her, don't make her the understudy. Yeah. Like there is, like, she's out to get me, like she wants this role. Yes. So I think as the movie progresses, there is this delusion that, yeah, like she is being what's the word I'm looking for, like people are out to get her, I guess. I'll just say that again.
Persecuted,
yeah.
She has paranoid delusions.
Mm-hmm.
And we also see hallucinations where she sees her face on other people.
Yes.
She has hallucinations of her body changing into a swan, of picking the feathers out of her skin. We see her skin like bubble up with the goosebumps, like feathers are about to burst out of her skin as she starts
like
to
literal goosebumps.
Right, literal swan bumps. Is that a thing?
Uh-huh. Yeah. She definitely, like, there are moments of the movie where she hears stuff too, like it's almost like a noise passes by her,
yeah,
and then she'll like kind of turn her head. She also starts all the pictures.
That part's freaky as
in
shit.
her mom's art studio, if I'll call it that, like
creepy shrine,
are like like moving, like the eyeballs are blinking, they're yelling, I think. So she's also hearing that external like auditory hallucination. I guess what we say another delusion is her idea that she's becoming a bird or a swan.
Yeah, probably.
That's like where her delusion and her hallucinations really meld.
Yeah, I think
into one.
They meld because we see her having even like tactile hallucinations, because it's, you know, people, when you hear that, you'll hear a lot of people with schizophrenia describe feeling like they got bugs in their skin, or like something's going to come out of their skin. And we see that, obviously you can't represent that visually, but you can see kind of what's happening when we see those goosebumps running up and down her skin when she's like visually becoming this black swan, when she's letting go of the white swan that she is.
And I don't know if it was like bad audio on the version of the movie that me and Hannah were watching, because I think we watched it. But the sound, the dialogue would kind of go in and out in parts.
Did it do that when you watched it? Because I was wondering if it was part of the effect of the movie, like where we were hearing what Nina was hearing.
I don't think so.
At first we were really impressed because we thought, "Ooh, this is like an interesting directorial decision to make, like where we couldn't like hear a sentence someone had just said." Yeah, but it might have also just been bad.
It might have just been
a bad
recording
version of the movie.
It could have been. I don't know. I'll have to go back and check, because there's so much sensory stuff going on in this movie.
Yeah, you're right.
It's like when she starts to get overwhelmed, like it's almost like a buzzing feeling, and then like someone's dialogue would cut out, and so we weren't sure if that was, or it'd get really soft where you could almost barely hear it.
Which I think is a really good example of being overstimulated. That when they would do that. So yeah, you'll have to see if your copy does that.
Yeah, I'll check. The other thing that I would say, you guys might want to check to see if you have your audio settings set up for it to be into.
Can we not
sorry,
about that right
this
now?
is nerd audio.
Sorry, nerd audio stuff. No, to check that it's not into surround sound as opposed to going into different channels, because that might be the problem.
Gotcha.
Because if they sent that audio to the back speakers when you were supposed to hear in the front, like to fuck with you, because they do that. Yeah, that could be it too. Anyway, sorry.
Well, but there is definite moments in the movie where you can. It is like that buzzy kind of, or it's almost like almost like flapping of wings or something. It was this kind of.
Oh yeah, that's definitely in there.
Nondescript noise, like almost like a white noise that she would like. It would like, go past her head, and she'd like turn her head. So we're seeing like a lot of clear symptoms of schizophrenia. So it is like the delusion parts. So
Right.
thinking that people are out to get you, like a lot of persecutory delusions can be a big theme of schizophrenia. All the hallucinations we just brought up. I'm trying to think what are the other. She doesn't really have any negative symptoms, and negative symptoms in schizophrenia are, it's not like negative like mean. It's negative like the lack of. So a person who's neglecting their personal hygiene, a person who's kind of like their face is flat, like they don't have any emotion on their face, or they're not giving eye contact, or they have really flat looking face, or like they talk in a monotone, like there's no intonation.
Be avoidant.
Yeah. And they might like lose interest and like just kind of become like flatter and more pulled away from the world. So kind
Just
of
withdraw.
losing ability.
Yeah.
And so that's what when they say negative in psychology, it means that you're losing something, like something has gone away. Not necessarily that it's negative, like mean, or the way we say when we're like negative self-talk or something is not what that means. And she's also displaying a lot of secondary complications with schizophrenia, like self-injury, anxiety, abuse of drugs, but that was kind of not really her like going towards drugs. It was more happening to her.
Yeah.
Social isolation, aggressive behaviors, but that's not common, which I do like the Mayo Clinic, what I'm reading off of, make sure to note that, because I know we've repeated here many times that people with mental illness are more likely to be victimized than they are to be aggressive, even though a lot of movies, including this one, portray it differently. So she does, if she went into like a hospital or something, I think there would be a pretty good chance she'd be diagnosed with schizophrenia.
I feel like if she went into an ER, yeah, but I feel like with all the things that we just listed, I think absolutely she would be, but I don't know if long term if that's what it would be or not. Only because like how we're about to talk about how there's just so many different factors here, and it'd be so hard to kind of start, you know, where do we start with this and how do we know that it's not complications from all the other things that have happened.
Right. Or biological basis, because she's obviously starving herself. We see that she's throwing up, and we know that she's under a tremendous amount of stress and is depressed, and depression can have psychotic features to it, so there's a lot that we don't know.
Yeah.
Psychosis is in a lot more mental health diagnoses than I think commonly known. I think people think if you're having psychosis, you're just schizophrenic.
Right.
Whereas you can be a number of mental health diagnoses, mental illnesses have psychosis as a possibility.
Correct.
Which I feel like is a shift in just the way that we understand it now. I feel like, because I feel like before, if you had any of those, like you said, you got diagnosed with schizophrenia, but now we know that there can be psychotic symptoms with pretty much any, with a good amount of them at least. And so I think,
I mean, you can have postnatal psychosis.
yeah.
Postpartum.
Psychosis.
That was what I was looking for. In my brain, I was thinking post-traumatic. I was like, that's not right. But with like
And it also
PTSD, you can have psychotic-esque symptoms as well.
absolutely.
Depression, bipolar.
Yeah. And I think, and her self-harm also seems linked to something, because it seems like she's been doing that. She did that before based on her mother's response.
Yes.
So it's also like one of those things where, we'd have to start in one place. Clearly really high anxiety, I think, which makes sense, I feel like, in the setting as well.
For sure. And she, if I had to guess, she's in her early 20s. They don't ever say her age in the movie, but she's at what I assume is the age when a lot of people start to experience the onset of schizophrenia. Between like 18 and I think
17 and 24.
17, 24 is the, like, you can get diagnosed earlier. I think you rarely get diagnosed later than that, unless it's like, I guess in terms of the onset of it, of schizophrenia, it's usually most commonly in that sweet spot of 17, 24, which it seems like, if I had to guess, she is that age.
Yeah, I think she is. I feel like she's 22. I don't know why I think that. I could just be totally full of shit.
I think she's older than that.
Okay.
I know Natalie Portman's older than that when this was filmed, but the character can be a number. I think, no, they talk about it, because she's the same age now that her mom was when she got pregnant.
22. I think it was 22.
There might be a reason why that number is stuck in your head. Well, feel free to correct us if we're wrong, listeners.
Yeah, let us know if I'm wrong.
But even if
she's
she's mid-20s, it's still around the age when this can really present itself.
Yeah,
also,
it's in the age of onset rage, right?
Yeah, and also, we don't really know how long these symptoms are going on pre-movie, like pre-us seeing her. Like, how long has she been, like, seeing things that aren't there? Like, how long has she been, like, maybe hearing things? And it might be a lot subtler than this movie shows. Because I think the next part of it is all the external factors, which understandably would blow up and exacerbate a lot of the symptoms that maybe she has been experiencing for a little while now. Yeah. But then the stress of finally becoming cast as the lead in Swan Lake just brings all of it up to the surface.
I think the stress of all that, but we can get to the work factors because we have that set up second. But I think the biggest evidence that we see in this movie that this has actually been going on for a while with her is, I know that her mom's relationship with her has a myriad of issues on its own. But the level of concern and hyper alertness to her mental state that mom shows and the level that she babies her makes me think that something has probably happened before. She has probably exhibited symptoms before, which is part of why mom is so over concerned about her. Like, do you notice the number of locks on that door?
I don't know how well mom is.
Mom's not well.
Yeah, this is the part
we'll
where it's hard to discern, like the chicken or the egg, kind of. Is mom really unwell and been really unwell maybe the majority of her daughter's life, and that's impacted genetically, like nature and nurture, on Nina's character, or Natalie Portman's character, Nina? Or is mom reacting to maybe mental health stuff that's gone on with Nina for a while that we just aren't privy to?
Super hypervigilance with Nina because of that. I don't know, Ben. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. Because I think I'm so sure that mom is sick with something, maybe personality disorder. So I think, so I didn't even realize that. I just assumed that it was something more with the mom and not something of a mother being generally concerned and having some really serious things happen mental health wise with her daughter.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's both. Right, I mean, like the evidence that mom's not well is clear.
Yeah,
I'm not. I won't dispute that point at all. Just the thing that I see is that, for me, having worked with this population, just like you two, and been in their homes and worked with their families, is that some of the signs and symptoms that we see in the burnout and stress that the family members of people living with chronic mental illness get is that they get a hyper alertness to the mental state of their afflicted loved one.
Absolutely.
Who's living with mental illness. And they also get overprotective, and because of the biological factors that go on with chronic mental illness like this, you might see an age regression or some of those negative symptoms where Nina's behaving at a developmental level that is lower than her age. The childishness that she has about her innocence, could be part of the illness itself. And mom could be hyper aware of that and alert and have seen things go on before and be burnt out with it, and that be part of why she acts the way she does. Not to excuse it, because she's obviously not well too, but to have that be yet another compounding factor of why this is such a fascinating case.
Absolutely.
I mean, what are we seeing with mom that's unhealthy? I mean,
she infantilizes her.
Infantilizes
her. We see that right away.
And she's always undressing her and dressing her like she's a child.
Yeah, she doesn't let her do
puts
anything.
Her to bed. She puts her to bed like a baby. Like puts a little nursery, the little lullaby. What am I thinking of?
I don't know.
The music box.
She puts the music box up. She tucks her in. She kisses her on the cheek. And she lets her mom know when she's ready for bed. It is a little kid. Not even a teenager, a 7-year-old.
I agree.
Definitely a little kid.
Yeah.
And the way that Nina's room is kept and the boundary violations you see, we're talking, what is she, clipping her nails, not letting her clip her own nails.
Always, invading her personal space, going in her bedroom unannounced and...
coming... I think she tries to come into the bathroom when she's taking a shower or something. Which again could be based on trauma, could be like because she knows that she has had some self-harm and that could be why, but also just her constant boundary breaking. And also the mother's, she has a really, so she gets a cake when Nina gets the role.
Right.
Right? And Nina, of course, can't eat it because she's restricting. So Mom says, okay, fine. Then Nina gets really upset and throws it in the trash. So
tries to throw it in the trash. Well, like, fakes like she's going to throw it in the trash.
Fakes like she's going to. She's clearly manipulating Nina, I think, until she changes her mind. So it's so hard to, I just feel like Mom has, and then we also see the mom in the chair, in like the chair looking at all the pictures that I'm assuming she's painted of her daughter, like maybe with depressive symptoms. So
I think that part is hard because I think that part of the movie, by then it's unclear what Nina's really seeing. I almost wonder with the paintings, how many of those are actually Nina's face or how many of those Nina thinks is her face.
That is something I didn't think about. That's a good point.
Because she's seeing her face everywhere.
All right, on other people, on all the other dancers.
Because it feels like it would make more sense that it would be the mom's face, that the mom would be painting herself.
There's a big mirror right there.
Yeah, like that's what I always thought it was until, and then when but also if we're watching the movie from Nina's perception, that it would make sense that we would see it as her, like see it as her face.
I mean, I think part of why things are unclear for us as clinicians is that Nina is the narrator of this movie, and she is a unreliable narrator.
Yeah, unreliable reporter.
She's mentally going through it with mental health symptoms. Because I would say another thing with the mom, like there's just so much enmeshment there. Unhealthy enmeshment. Like with the cake thing, she goes, I got our favorite. And then as soon as she feels rejected by Nina for not eating it, even though it's clear why Nina's not eating it, Mom does like have such a big bombastic reaction. When she feels like Nina's running late, she calls Susan. No, even when Nina's not running late, she's always calling Susan or Susie at the ballet studio and getting like
essentially getting gossip. And for a minute, I actually thought that the mom doesn't leave the apartment at all. I thought that she might not even leave because it's kind of what it seemed like.
She may not.
How she came
was the
home.
last performance, though.
Yeah, that's what she said.
That,
yeah, but she said that.
Well, she left and got the cake.
Yeah, so we do, but the reason why she couldn't be there for something, she's like, oh, I wish I could go, blah, 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 but like didn't really have any clear reason why she couldn't
She couldn't
go.
get a ticket, no Susie, and she's like, yeah, you're right, I called Susie.
Right.
So also which could be the hypervigilance of having a daughter is struggling, is she's always double checking what Nina says. Like, you're right, I talked to Susie at the office and she confirmed what you said. Or like, yeah, I know you're late because I talked to Susie. So it's like she doesn't trust anything that comes out of Nina's mouth, really. And I think one clue for me into the family history part of it, the psychosocial bit, is when Mom does that thing where she's like, well, you can do what I couldn't do because I got pregnant with you. And so now, like, you are living my dream.
Right. Mom over-identifies with Nina.
Yes.
Like, she is allowing herself to, like, transfer her dreams and hopes into Nina. She's living through Nina.
Mm-hmm. She absolutely is.
Also resentful of her for that fact. And we see that resentment come through, like, a little bit. Mom tries not to let that resentment that Nina's getting the success that she wanted, but it comes out in that conversation. Like, you see that bitterness towards her, that, like, I gave up my dream for you. Like, she's like, I love you, and she obviously does, but it's not healthy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's also part of the, I got our favorite because this is our accomplishment because I couldn't do it, so now it has to be, like, our win. It's like you see this with, like, I don't know. You probably see this a lot with like shows like Toddlers and Tiaras with like, or like just general, like it's a pretty big trope in a lot of like football movies and stuff like that,
absolutely.
where it's like, this is our dream. That's not my dream, Dad. It's your dream. Like that kind of thing, where there is this, like you're saying, that over-identification because you feel some sort of resentment or disappointment with how maybe your life turned out. And so you just project onto your child. And so it compounds the pressure that Nina would already be feeling by being in the position she's in with her career.
Which you see in a lot of high performance situations where parents who are coaches of children who are athletes or parents of children who are like seriously like traveling athletes, on a possible pro track, the over-involvement and the pressure and the sometimes over-identification for where the child is succeeding where maybe the parent didn't. Mm-hmm. And then putting that pressure and those hopes and dreams, projecting them onto the child as if they're the child's. And maybe they are, but maybe not. Because you see that a lot of times when children are successful athletes but give up because they're so tired of dealing with their parent and everything that goes on around it and the pressures of that. And I feel like that energy is projected by mom in this movie.
Yeah, because I think because it really shapes the relationship, the parent relationship. It affects it so much with their child and having and feeling the pressure of having to perform really well or be perfect. I mean, essentially, that's what it is. She has to be perfect. That's why does all this stuff. That's why her parameters are so... She has to fit in such a small box,
right?
I feel like.
Because I have... Based on my interpretation of this film, what I see is that Nina wants to be... And this is what she gets ragged on by the director the whole time. We'll talk about him later. But is her desire for perfection.
Yes.
She wants to be perfect. She wants to do it perfectly. Never once did I see or hear her mention her love for the ballet. Ever.
I think there seems to be, when I watch her in the movie, she does give off this air of like she really loves ballet and loves what she's doing and thinks it's really beautiful. Like the way that she talks about Winona Ryder's character and like how much beauty like she brought to it. I do think there is some genuine love of the craft, I guess. But it's so confounded. It's just a shame that she has a natural inclination towards a career that's going to blow up her anxiety. It's like continues to be this chicken or an egg thing, which does she have a predisposition to be really perfectionistic and anxious and hard on herself, and then she just happened to fall into a career that blew that up? Or how was she before she got into this career?
I don't think she fell into this career at all. I think she was shaped by her mother her entire life.
Yeah. And I would imagine that she's been doing it since she was a little girl.
Probably,
yeah,
as soon as she could.
So I feel like that identity and that all of those thoughts and ideas about being perfect and doing a good job, that she's, that narrative has been formed for a really long time for her.
I mean, one part of it that we don't even have space to get into is like her lack of identity total. I think why Lily is so antagonizing for her is that she's trying to make her a more independent person. Like, let's go to dinner. Let's talk to dudes. Let's maybe take some dudes home. Let's do drugs. Like, let's be your own person. Who cares if you're going out? Like, who cares what the director thinks? Like, she's trying to pull her out in a way that I think is very healthy, actually.
Yeah.
And I think it triggers a lot of Nina's symptoms. I think in this movie, we see a lot of direct relation between like sexual experiences in the movie and her psychosis, or having a hard episode in the movie seems to be directly related to like a sexual experience.
Yeah, and something I want to touch on that my wife actually pointed out when we were watching it, that like it is a really insightful thing, is that when you watch this film, she just made the comment, she's like, she has not had one sexual experience in this movie that was not traumatic.
No.
Like, not one of the incidents was...
None of them.
Any time that she's masturbating, I could... Like, there's blood in the water and she hallucinates, or...
Her mom's standing there.
Literally
mom's sleeping in her room while she's, like, getting into herself and... Like, really letting go, and then all of a sudden mom's like, whoa!
And then when she does make out with that guy, which seems like the most autonomous choice she makes in the movie, it's when she's on drugs, and when she kind of comes to, she's like freaked out about making out with that guy in the bathroom in that club. And then when she does have what you could argue is the most positive agency-based sexual experience in the movie, when she sleeps with Lily's character, it's a full-blown psychotic episode.
Right, did not happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I mean, and that's something we didn't even bring up with the hallucinations, is that whole period when she goes out to the club, when she leaves the club and goes home, like that whole piece is a full-blown psychotic episode where Lily is not there. Right. No. And I think what is really clever directorially is you can tell by the way he shoots it, like in the mirrors and stuff, that they're kind of like gliding in and out of each other in the mirrors, like the image of Mila Kunis and the image of Natalie Portman kind of like weave in and out in the mirror as if like they're breaking off from each other, or like they're becoming the same person and then different people. It was just really cool looking.
Yeah.
And it was a big clue that Lily was like
not there.
Nina in the moment was just the presentation of her.
Well, and the other thing, like the other clues that wasn't real is like, one, nobody else interacts with her, and two, we know that mom is already super overprotective and overinvolved. Like, what is the likelihood that she would not have interacted with her?
Yeah.
Mom does not say.
Well, she does talk to her before they go to the club.
Yeah, she was there for that.
Yeah,
but after. She doesn't interact with her at all. Like,
yeah, that's true.
She's in her house at like 3 a.m. with Nina's there all fucked up. No way. She does not interact with her. Like, what did you do to my daughter? What happened? No way.
You're totally right. She'd probably be standing outside the apartment building, waiting for her to come home, or standing outside the door, waiting for her to walk up or something. Like with with her anxiety and the way that we see her throughout the movie, I think that would make a lot of sense. So that's a really good point.
So we kind of already did this, moving past like the home environment factors, which is all the stuff with her mom, which is how much of this is genetic, how much of this is being raised by a mother who's probably not well, and then how much of it is a jumble of all that stuff.
And a cultural perfection. I mean, that can't be underplayed with performing arts, particularly the high arts. Like,
well, this is what we're moving into, the work factors.
Right, right, and that's why I'm moving into it. Like the high arts, like conservatory level dance, music, and painting. Like the perfectionism in that, and the scrutinization you get for everything. Yeah, is intense.
No, so she is, like we've already kind of brought up, she is in what I would consider a really horrible work environment for someone who's not well. Yeah. Which is a highly subjective, highly competitive, image-based work setting where, like you're saying, Ben, there is a understanding and almost like a idolizing of being a dickbag, of being like really like highly scrutinizing and like keeping people quote unquote like on their toes. That whole idea that in order for people to perform the best, you have to be really hard on them.
Where do you think on your toes came from?
Does it come from that?
I think so.
Yeah.
So, because we see that right from the jump in this movie, in the very first scene at the dance studio when they're all doing their morning like exercises.
Yeah.
And the director comes in, they all change a little bit their clothing to be more appealing to him for whatever reason.
Because,
well, I mean,
whatever. They know why.
They know why.
Well, some people put clothes on, some people take clothes off, right? Or do they all take clothes off?
They all take clothes off.
They all take clothes off, and also they do it because he's a sexual predator.
Correct.
And
so not only are all the things that you're talking about, but then also her boss is a sexual predator.
Yeah. But them going through and like him tapping everyone in front of each other, so it's very competitive in that way. None of the other girls like her because they like talk shit about her and they like think that she's uppity, I think is kind of the energy. And just like having to constantly be working for the next role. And what you see with like Winona Ryder's character is also being in a career where you only have a certain window of time which to shine and be the star before you just age out or injure out of the career. So it's so high pressure in that you have to get it now, like your fame or your goals, or you can't.
Do you feel like it's that, or do you feel like it's that the director got tired of her and wanted a new girl? Because that's what I feel like it is.
I think it's both.
Okay.
Yeah, there's an age limit in ballet for sure. Like, do you age out?
Jesus.
I know a guy actually who is with Joffrey, and if he happens to chime in on our social media, that would be great about this, Derek.
Yeah. So we have, like you guys had said, not just a highly competitive, high-pressured position that she's just now getting into a higher place of where every eyes are on her, but she's also has a director or a boss who is a huge grosso.
Yeah.
Is that the technical term? A grosso?
Yep.
Huge grosso. He's fucking gross.
And not to make it trivial, but yeah.
I mean, he sexually assaults her. multiple times.
Multiple times. And you can only assume that he's done that to other people.
You can only assume that he's done that to everybody who...
Well, he clearly had a sexual relationship with Winona Ryder's character.
Absolutely.
Oh, obviously.
He gives them pet names. Like, he calls Winona's character My Little Princess, and then, like, at the end of the movie, he calls Nina Little Princess.
Yep.
Even just asking, even if he didn't kiss her the way he kissed her, the questions he asks.
Yes.
Like, have you ever had, like, what kind of sex do you like? And, like, asking her all those, like, really invasive sexual questions.
Like, you don't look sexy enough. Like, what do you think sex... All of that shit. Calling her frigid. All of those sexual... That's all sexual harassment. And you can't ask any... None of that has anything to do with her job as a ballerina.
I mean, well... I'm going to contend a little bit. There's only a little because he's a predator, and I don't want to minimize that. But, like, for the role of the Black Swan, like, her needing to transform and that being a central part of the plot, like, as a director, I think he has room to tell her, like, you need, like, to be more, like, passionate and sexual to portray this role. But to ask her all those questions is where he, like, went well beyond inviting her to his house alone, making her vulnerable.
Like, drinks after the gala.
Right. All that is where he, like, crossed all sorts of lines. But, like, telling her that this character needs to be more sexual, I think is fair. But
he never said it like that.
No, he never said it like that.
And also this idea...
Right, no, I'm not defending him. He's a fucking creep.
Yeah.
It's just, like, I think... that it's fair for a director to tell someone who's...
Would maybe tell somebody about the Black Swan like that. I got you.
Right, like, to tell him, like, as a director, like, this... like, think about, like, characters you've seen in movies where, like, this character needs to be super sexual and you have to be more comfortable being sexual as this character.
Right.
But not, like, going home and, like, you have to be sexual with yourself or with other people or with me. Like, that is not okay at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, this... And I think he probably feels justified in his head. I think what he's doing also helps him reinforce what he's doing to himself.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm making them a better dancer. Like, I'm bringing out the sexuality in her that's going to make her performance.
Right.
And then she should be grateful to me for bringing that out in her. And I think...
Oh, I'm sure he thinks all of those things.
I think he thinks he's, like, this is his job, is to do this. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if he really genuinely thinks that. I mean, it's also, like, there are coaches and... like creative arts leaders who, like, I've never seen Whiplash, but there are people who think that the way to, like, they're doing their pupils a goodness, a service by ripping them apart and by really pushing them and, like, I don't want to be doing this, but I know it's what you need to be better.
Right.
And selling that narrative to themselves as well as a way to justify the way that they're behaving.
Yeah.
Because I think, honestly, the only more appropriate critique he gives of her, and that's, I'm like, you know, is when he points to Mila Kunis's character and he's like, see how she's doing it? It's effortless. She's not trying. Like using her as, like, an example of maybe what more he's looking for, but he does it still in that competitive state where he's like, he's feeling her paranoia about this girl is doing it. And that also, that idea too, that you can make a good artist, or you can drive people to their best performance by making them compete against each other and making them feel like their position isn't secure. There can always be somebody else.
I mean, in that world, that was true.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I'm not saying it's not true.
Right.
I'm saying it's very unhealthy for her especially.
For her especially, yeah, I'll agree with that. But, like, for that world, like, to be, like, him pointing out to Lily, I thought was appropriate. Like, watch how she does it. Like, look at how she, like, she's free and she's into it and she's passionate about her movements. And it's not, like, this perfection that is the White Swan, which she makes herself all the time. It's, like, that perfection base. Like, it's not about being perfect. It's about seducing the prince and seducing the room and the audience, and you, like, being captivating, and some of that is through passion, like communicating that and making her go, like, finding a spark in her. I think is okay, but, like, for her character is okay for a director to do, but for her character, that's not the right approach at all for this person.
Yeah, because it's just making her fall apart.
Right, and as a coach, you need to learn to...
She's just breaking at the cracks. I mean, like, it's just completely... Which is what we see.
Yeah, we see her, like...
In the final scene.
As a responsible coach, you need to be able to get a performance out of your supervisee or the person you're coaching, whatever the word would be.
We're really struggling with that word.
I just don't know what it would be for to get your performer. We'll use the word performer. Your pupil, sure, but to get your performer to perform at their peak, potential. Finding a way to push them, I think, is appropriate, but you need to do it in a way that's not going to break them. And he definitely failed her in that respect. Mm-hmm. Because I'm sure there was a way to push her out of her comfort zone of perfection that wasn't making her paranoid.
Yes.
But also, she's not well.
Yeah, so that colors the whole situation.
Right.
Because she's already like the paranoid delusion that she's already starting to feel. He's feeding on that by using Lily, who's someone that she's already feeling roughly about, making her feel like she could be dropped at any time, and she's already feeling like people are out to get her. Then the way, because he's so sexual with her, then she has that hallucination that he's also being sexual with Lily.
Yeah, I don't think that happened.
Yeah,
I don't think so either. Mm-hmm. I don't think so either.
I don't think she rubbed the crotch of the other dancer. I don't think she did a single inappropriate thing as herself at work. I think that we see Lily as herself at that club and like kind of a free person, but I don't think she did any of those like deviant things that Nina sees her do. I think those are all delusions. Which
is what you kind of said. Is that you can kind of tell when we're seeing actual Lily and how there's a different Lily, who the one where only Nina interacts with her, which I think is right. I think it's a full on hallucination.
The lighting's also always different on her when it's not her. It's always like bright and it's always a dark and kind of far away when it's the hallucination. She's always in the dark when it's the hallucination or the delusions.
And I think one part of the situation with the ballet director, which made me feel very sad as I was watching it, is that at no point does Lily feel like anything he's doing is incorrect. If anything, she apologizes to him, like when he roughly kisses her in that first like assaulting moment, and then she bites him. Yeah. She feels so bad about that, and she's convinced and she lost the part. But on this, at no point does she like he was inappropriate, fuck that guy. Like she always is feeling like she did something wrong, and she's not being the version of herself that she wants to be for him. Like even when they make out and he like grabs her boobs and they make out in that dance space, like she's wants to keep kissing. Like when he pulls away and he's screwing with her. Yeah. So what's, I think, a big component of this, because she is so infantilized, is I wouldn't be surprised if these are the first, like, sexual experiences she's having, period.
Absolutely.
And so she has and because she is so immature in her development emotionally, it seems to be, that she just has no frame of reference for how un-okay this behavior is. And...
Right.
And also, I assume she wasn't raised with any sort of male father figure, because it seems like it was very much like her and her mom. So she also has no like man in her life who maybe appropriately demonstrated like fatherly boundaries. And even though her mom has no boundaries.
Well, her mom doesn't condemn that type of behavior either. Mm-hmm. When her mom has like an accepting attitude towards like whatever he might have done, and like almost has like a subtext of encouraging her to engage in like oh, did he invite you to his house? Did you?
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what she said, but there's...
No, you're right. I remember the scene. I can't remember what the fuck she says either, but I know exactly what you're talking about. She absolutely does endorse it and makes it seem as though... And
probably how she was born.
Yeah. Re-encourages the idea that Nina has to do whatever he wants in order to keep
what's that pleasing, perfectionistic behavior that keeps being reinforced for Nina and is pushing her to a literal breaking point in this movie.
Right. And so we talked about like the mental side of things, but let's also look at the ballet where we have to talk about the physical. Mm-hmm. Like the thinness, the smallness, the petiteness that's a huge focus for the ballerinas creates tremendous pressure on people, on what they can eat, the indulgences they're allowed to give on. Like it creates such a culture of self-control and perfection that bulimia and anorexia run rampant in that community. And we see that with Nina, with her obsession with thinness and the need to throw up.
I think that the movie does a good job, though, of it almost being unclear to me watching it if it is true bulimia. Because she always pukes after an incident of, like, extreme anxiety. And though that is like also could be a presentation of like, I need control, so I'm going to make myself throw up, which is, you know, people will purge as a form of like a negative coping skill.
Yeah.
But also people throw up when they're very anxious.
Yeah.
And so whenever she pukes in the movie, it's right after like a really hardcore situation. I can't remember any off the top of my head, but it will be like a confrontation or really bad news or something. And then she goes to the bathroom and vomits. So it makes me... So there, and it could be both, you know, it could be either. But I think I just wanted to like point out that it doesn't necessarily could be bulimia, though we all assume it is.
Yeah.
It could also be like anxiety induced, like nausea and vomiting.
I think that is right for all of the episodes, but the first one.
Oh, because when she's just kind of hanging out in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So I agree with you. I think that I had that same reaction to it, not the first time I saw it, but this time when I watched it, I was like,
Yeah.
Like, that's definitely an anxiety response, but her need to control everything else in her life, like, I think that purging behavior is a combination of things. I think that you're right that it is largely stress-induced, and that it might be stress-induced nausea or dizziness, because that is a symptom of that happens.
Absolutely.
But I think it's the complicated factors. But you're right, in this film, it's more implied than it's directly addressed.
Yeah. And then also to be doing a job where you're burning so many calories and you're physically working your body so hard, and then you're not getting the nutrients you need, like your brain is not working correctly. So
Right.
that in itself could be causing a lot of the symptoms we're seeing, or at least making her very vulnerable to the psychosis symptoms she's having. From what I've been told anecdotally, is that when you have too low of a BMI, you really struggle with flexibility in your thinking. And so also the rigidity of her perfectionism and what she can and can't do might be directly a result, or at least heavily influenced by a low body weight.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is something we think about a lot.
Yeah. I think that you're right. And I think that even when we look at all the different complicated things about Nina, that we were talking before we started recording, that I think she'd probably have to be treated for her weight, possible bulimia problem before we do anything else, to make sure that she's even healthy enough to get the other kind of treatment that she might need. I feel like she would be medically admitted first and then sent to the psych ward once they got her healthy.
Yeah, I think that's a legitimate possibility. It's a confounding factor in the diagnosis of her, right? Is that we don't know how much of what is going on with her that's making her unwell is based on her physical condition.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
there's just so many parts.
This movie is just, I mean, to sum it up real quickly, so we have the pressure of her job, and that also normalizes a lot of the behavior she's doing, like being really perfectionistic, restricting her eating, being really hard on herself. There is a social isolation factor as well because of the competitiveness, but also she could be not naturally, but like she could also be socially isolating because of her mental health, but also because her mom has created an environment in which she's very socially isolated.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, she turns down a lot of invitations to go out and hang out throughout the film because she has to get home.
Yeah.
But she has to get home like a 10-year-old has to get home.
Yeah.
Not like an adult 27-year-old or whatever she is woman has to get home.
Yeah. Whew. And I guess the part we didn't really go into yet is, I mean, how the movie ends. I mean, she kind of has what we call, I guess what you could, I don't know if I would even call it a psychotic break.
I would.
Yeah. Well, I think she has
a psychotic break.
Drug-induced psychosis. And that, well, no, I will take that back, because she goes to the club, she takes that's another external factor, is she takes drugs at the club with Lily.
Yeah.
And
Ecstasy.
and that does seem to exacerbate her symptoms. I wonder if that was like the true onset of like the real push. Like it almost like cracked the door open in her mind to really like, because once that happens in the movie, that's like it's like she hits the ground running in terms of the psychosis. She has the full-blown episode where she thinks that she's having a sexual encounter with Lily.
Yes.
She gets aggressive with her mom, and like, is that the next day where she breaks her mom's hand?
Yeah.
She has a big fault with we didn't even get to that boundary pushing thing when her mom lets her be late for work the next day.
Yeah,
like
she doesn't
just
wake
as
her
a
up.
punishment.
Yeah,
of just sits there and like lets her be late and doesn't say anything.
Or tries to prevent her from performing.
Yeah.
The opening night.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It tries to. Which I guess you could argue was the only time maybe her mom did show that she cared about her mental health more than her ballet career, because she tells them that she's too sick to perform. But you could argue either way in that direction of like it's also contrling.
And the jealousy.
Yes.
Like
sabotaging
Just straight up
her.
manipulative. I mean, she's sucks.
Well, if you get too successful, will you leave me? Well, because I think I know I'm kind of
clinical statement.
I know I'm kind of going backwards in terms of the topic points that we're trying to address, but like I said earlier, I think a big theme of this movie too is Nina trying to get more independent and then also more like grown up. Like she's getting more sexual. She's trying to do things more outside of her mom, and I wonder if that's why, at the zenith of that, her mom then tries to sabotage her and keep her from performing, because then she might be too successful and she'll leave. Like she's starting to become her own person, and now she has resources to maybe be her own person.
Absolutely.
And that's maybe why, if she really is crying in front of all these paintings that she painted in that one part,
when
that
she's just
could
sitting
be
in that
why
chair.
she's freaking out.
Yeah.
But I mean, the movie culminates with then she rushes out the door for this performance. She's full blown hallucinating. Like she thinks that she goes to the hospital and she thinks that she's stabbed, or Winona Ryder's character like stabbed herself in the face, but it kind of seems like she stabbed Winona Ryder's character in the face because she's the one holding the bloody
pencil
nail file thing.
Yeah.
I don't think that happened either.
Yeah, and then she goes to home and then she sees
there's no blood on her when she gets home.
And then she sees like the character in her kitchen, and then she thinks her legs turn into bird legs, and before that she thinks she sees the feathers come out of her back, and then she wakes up, she goes to her performance, and then she's in it. Like she's periods of lucidity where she's like putting her makeup on and like getting ready and like performing in general, but throughout that, like you're saying, Ben, like she's seeing Lily being really sexually provocative in a way that seems out of character, possibly.
Yeah.
She's also thinking that Lily is talking to her, and it's not Lily at all.
Well, she sees Lily putting on the makeup that we then see Lily has not done that.
Yeah.
Lily is not putting on the Black Swan makeup at all.
Yeah.
She is not overstepping her bounds at all throughout the film. Like, actual Lily is not doing that. That's all her projection of the Black Swan onto somebody else and not able to accept that that's her.
Yeah. Her affect really changes. Like, this is where Natalie Portman really earned that Oscar, is that her whole, like, I don't know, energy, like, persona changes when she starts dancing as the Black Swan. Like, she's a lot more, like, liquidy in her movements, and, like, she's got a real, like, siren, like, sex siren face on. And
well, even the confidence that she comes in, when she comes in and sees that Lily is getting ready, or thinks that Lily is getting ready, right, what you said, Ben, and assumes that, then like she goes in and she starts putting makeup on, and the director, the piece of shit guy, he comes in and she's just like, I'm getting ready, like, get out, and he leaves. So I feel like it's really clear that that's part of her affect change as well, I feel like.
Well, her kissing him, like, she gets off stage and she like lays a big one on him, and it makes him so, you can tell he's aroused by it, and it's so gross. Yeah,
he's
and
gross.
he probably thinks, I did it. I got her to get out of her shell, and he's like patting himself on the back.
Exactly what he thought.
Yeah. And then when she's performing that last performance part as a Black Swan, I mean, she thinks she has wings.
Yeah.
She thinks she has wings, y'all. She's full blown in that
cinematically
episode.
That part is kind of amazing.
Oh, it's beautiful. This movie is beautiful.
It's a beautiful movie. I mean, anyway,
but it's unnerving.
We can talk about it when we get to final thoughts. Sorry, but
so I mean, the movie kind of ends with the culmination of what you would see with someone having all these factors go on.
Yeah,
which is they have a full blown episode. Do I think it would have ended in her stabbing herself in the stomach? I don't know about that. Like, because it's the part where we, like I already said in this episode, but this idea that when someone's very mentally ill, they're going to be aggressive. Can they be aggressive? Yes. But to the point of, like, murder, where she thinks she has murdered Lily.
Yeah.
And actually she's stabbed herself.
Yeah, it seems unlikely.
Yeah.
I mean, can it happen? Yes. Can it result in self-injury due to psychosis? Yes. Is that the point in time which you might encounter somebody or in a hospital or need to hospitalize them? Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's the risk of harm to self or others. But like, how frequent is that for people that encounter psychosis? Not very.
Also, the idea that she could even perfectly dance this ballet when she is in a full-blown psychotic episode.
Yeah.
That's cinematic. That's movie magic.
Yeah.
That's just the story that this movie's trying to tell. Because if someone's that ill that they're not even sure that the people around them are really there, how are they doing the spacing of dancing, the routine correctly, like the cues?
Like, she would most likely be responding to all of the different things she's seeing and things are happening, which I think is what sometimes happens with people who have schizophrenia, right? They're reacting to internal stimuli. And so I think that's what I feel like she would be standing on stage reacting to her own stuff.
Flapping her wings.
Yes, like, I don't think she would be dancing at all. I think you guys are absolutely right.
Probably be muttering to herself. I mean, she'd look ill.
Yeah.
And the fact that everyone's interacting with her throughout this part of the movie is if she's fine. Like the way the director talks to her, the way even Lily thanks her, like real Lily thanks, like congratulates her at the end and gives her praise. Like, everyone's talking to her like she seems fine, like even better than fine, like at her peak.
Yes.
Whereas she's talking to people that aren't there. She's having full-blown fights in her dressing room with nobody.
Yeah. With herself. It's not nobody. It's with
you know
herself.
What I mean?
It's
like,
not all happening in her mind. She stabs herself.
But I mean, if you were to look at her, you'd be like, there's nobody in there she's talking to. Like, she's not with it. So this idea that this movie's portraying that she could still perform her job really well and no one would be, like, eyeballing her is nonsensical.
Yeah.
No. So let's look at treatment for this movie, because I feel like there's a lot that we can probably talk about in final thoughts about analysis of this film that we're sort of getting into. Let's look at treatment before we get there. So when we look at this film, what sticks out to you as what treatment approach you'd like to take?
I feel like, I don't even know, dude. Like, we'd have to figure out what is the most, it's like you have to prioritize need. And I think we've talked about this with, like, Fear and Loathing and stuff, is like, what's the first layer we kind of have to manage. With her, I think it's remiss to not see her psychosis as the first thing you need to tackle. Because even if it's been induced by environmental factors, stress, drugs, whatever, like, you need to manage that part of it because she's not in reality right now.
Right.
But I mean, after that, I mean, the first thing I would want to do, maybe, like, let's say if she was in a more stable place with her mind, I would say probably existential work I'd want to do with Nina individually. Like, who are you? How much of what you do on the day-to-day, minute-to-minute is something you genuinely want to do versus something your mom wants you to do versus something you think you should be doing. Like, kind of really breaking down for her how to be a grown woman, to be quite honest. Like, is she happy? I don't even know if she can even conceptualize the idea of happiness. It's probably so intertwined with her relationship with her mom and her relationship with everybody that I don't think she is an individual.
Yeah.
And so I'd really want to do, like, all this other stuff.
Identity work.
Yeah. I'd, like, once she's, like, gotten the eating disorder stuff figured out, once she's gotten the psychosis figured out, maybe once she's also, like, gotten away from her mom, which I will throw the mom baton to Hannah once we get to her. But if that's what you want to talk about. But I think,
just shift that right to the family therapist.
But I think as an individual therapist, I think, I mean, honestly, because I know I'm a child therapist too, like, she probably is more of a teenager.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's also, I think, wanting to do with her, like,
the tween.
The existential work also be, like, maybe even, like, sexual identity related.
Yeah.
Like, where do you feel like you are as a woman? Like, what age do you feel like you're at? Like, what is it about you that you know is true versus maybe what you just think you are? Absolutely. Or who you think you are. And I think that will take that'll be the long, hard work that she will do for years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even just processing the trauma of the sexual assaults, I mean, and like you said, helping create a a healthy sexual identity for herself would be so important.
Right, and assuming she survived the end of the movie, which we don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I guess we couldn't do shit because she'd be dead.
Well, we don't know if she's dead. Maybe.
I mean, it heavily implies that she's dead.
She lost consciousness, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would say, I mean, also, before we have to get existential work, it'd also be like the self-harming behavior. Like,
yeah.
I mean, the first thing I want to do when I have a client who ever has self-harm background is you want to do some sort of crisis safety plan. Because the last moment in the movie when she does stab herself is that a version of her that is suicidal. So we want to make sure we don't ignore that. And wanting to escape, the pressures of her life. And then just having like a crisis plan around self-harm. Like, what can we do instead when we want to self-harm? We want to purge. Because purging is also a version of self-harm. Yeah. So do we do grounding techniques that keep us safe? Do we... Like, there's one that's good for self-harming where it's you hold an ice cube in your hand, and because it's a sort of painful sensation, and it's a jolting physical sensation, but you can't really hurt yourself holding ice.
Right.
Worse, maybe you give yourself like a mild burn, but not even because it melts too quickly.
Melts too fast,
but it does have that similar, like...
It can release the same chemicals holding onto an ice cube.
Mm-hmm. So it's like sort of harm reduction-esque thing, like flicking a rubber band against your arm, which I don't particularly love because I feel like you can really hurt yourself doing that. But it's less harmful than cutting, so it's like you have to weigh that with yourself. I guess it's also unclear what her real history of self-harm is. Like, is it all just scratching, or was she ever cutting, or like what that all looked like?
Picking.
Yeah.
So remember the part where she gets out a whole kit of stuff that like where she I think was just using her nails for a little while, but she gets out a nail file, she gets a piece of paper, she takes out the lipstick that she stole from Winona Ryder's character and puts that, like, she's got a whole little ritual. So I'm pretty sure that the self-harm is pretty consistent, has been pretty consistent throughout her life, I would imagine. And
let me think about what her mom makes her wears that cover up because she's been picking and scratching.
When she wakes up and she's wearing like the mittens that are tied to her hands.
Yeah.
Ugh, anyway. But so, barring all those really extreme things, once all that stuff got dealt with, then we would do, I think the long work would be existential work. And trying to and figuring out is ballet healthy for you? Even if that is like your passion, it's so intermingled with all this negative behavior and all this trauma, do we need to separate ourselves, or can we do a different version of it? Can we be like a dance instructor for little kids, or can we do another art form that gets that part of us but isn't re-engaging in a traumatic environment that maybe we can't handle because of our own perfectionistic tendencies and things like that? So it would just be long existential work, I think, for Nina for a long time, and trying to build her up outside of her mother and outside of dance. Which, if she started when she was really young, she might not know if she really likes dance or not.
Exactly.
I don't think she does, but I know that's just me.
And I also feel like the other part, we're also assuming that she doesn't have schizophrenia. So there's also a chance that she would experience other, have psychosis at other times. And, it might even be where it would be really hard to do existential work with her, depending on where she's at when it comes to her, but we don't know that,
because it's one of those things where who knows what she would be like if she was medicated for schizophrenia. Right. Who knows how much of the stuff that she's been doing throughout the movie, even when she seems saner, is a product of psychosis. It would be interesting how she presents, but kind of you're saying, Hannah, sometimes in order to manage your psychosis, the medication you take really impairs your thinking, and so that does play a part in how much you can engage in therapy, but you can.
Absolutely.
This movie just has so many moving parts. So many moving parts,
so very many.
So I think barring all the more intense stuff, I think it's what I would do with her.
Okay. I think we should let Hannah probably close this one out because of all the family bananas, so I'll go now. Is the thing that I really want to talk about with this one that stuck out to me most was the need for quality assessment with her. And the need to do what we call a differential diagnosis process, which we've all kind of hinted at, but I wanted to kind of formalize what we as professionals do and how we kind of go through that process, because when we're looking at all of the stuff we've talked about throughout this, the skin picking and the like self-harming tendencies, the eating disorders, the biological factors, the social factors, the psychotic features in this, and the drugs. I'm not sure how much time passed between when she took those drugs and when the performance happened. But when people use ecstasy, ecstasy usually is in your system for about a day, and then the fallout from it can be like a week of like being intensely depressed. So like with her, like we really need to do like a differential diagnosis to kind of figure out what's going on here and where do we, like Brittany was saying, like where do we prioritize and start? And like you'd want to like go through an assessment process of figuring out like a full like interdisciplinary assessment with her. Like she needs a hospital. I'm going to start with that.
She would need. Yeah,
she needs a hospital. She needs medical doctors to look at her because we don't know how much her physical state is deteriorated from her lack of her malnourishment and how that's impacting her brain functioning. And like if she's dehydrated, if she's malnourished, if she's not eating and taking care of herself and that's just causing degradation, we don't know. What we also don't know is how much and what exactly did she take and how long has it been since she took it, because while we do see
it was like 2 or 3 days,
which is long enough that the intense depression that sets in after people take ecstasy happens, which could have triggered why the psychotic symptoms get worse. Because when people get very depressed to what we call the severe range, psychotic symptoms can emerge. Now she's showing psychotic symptoms throughout the whole film. Like even at the start when she's leaving the train, we see her doing the hallucination thing where she sees her face on that woman.
Yes.
But they get much worse after that point.
Yeah, they do.
So, like, figuring out, like, what's going on and how we can separate out how to treat her. And I think the therapy, it's not commonly talked about anymore, but we learned about it in grad school that we'd want to learn with her is multimodal therapy. And kind of assessing through the basic ID, where you, like, break people down into their behavior, their affect, the symptoms, the cognitions, the interpersonal and the medical stuff. So you break it down and kind of analyze, okay, what approach do I need to take for each level of intervention here? Because there is so much going on that just picking like one point is not going to do it. Like Brittany said, like there's going to be long work with this because we're going to need to be teaching her like social skills. We're going to be have to teaching her how to recognize symptoms. She's going to have to adjust to medication.
I wonder how many life skills she has because her mom babies her so much.
Right.
Like, you would think she did. I mean, her mom's taking her earrings off for her at night. Like, how much does she really know how to do in terms of her day-to-day that's not ballet related in terms of skills?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, like, I was just kind of running through those. I had to pull basic idea up because I had brain fart. But, like, the acronym for that stands for behavior, affect, sensation, imagery, cognition, interpersonal effectiveness, and drugs biological processes. So that's kind of the approach that I would want to take with her, because each level of that basic ID for her is going to require a different approach. Mm-hmm. There's so much. And I think that with her, what I would want to really be figuring out is, like, how do we deal with the immediate crisis that she's bleeding and get her hospitalized? Because I'm going to assume that she lives from the end of this movie. Maybe she does, maybe she doesn't.
Well, I think if she was able to do a whole dance after stabbing herself, then it probably isn't deep enough or traumatic enough to kill her, would be my guess.
Yeah.
I know it's also just the cinema of the movie magic, that no one really notices that she's bleeding through a white costume till the very, very end.
Right, like blood doesn't immediately start spurting out if you know.
Stab yourself in the stomach.
Right, get the vena cava or wherever severed. Yeah, you could have issues. But she's...
I mean, she'd be hospitalized first. She's a danger.
Right. She'd be hospitalized. Yeah. You need to stabilize her, but also we need to get her nourished, get the drugs out of her system, detox her, and then figure out, like, how we can begin the process of separating her and mom out, like, making her into an adult, figuring out what she wants to do with the rest of her life, and if she can even return to performing and what that means. There's a lot of complex features here, but it would require really breaking down and kind of figuring out, like, okay, is this person dealing with depression with psychotic features? Would the psychotic features resolve if she got less depressed? Would
I mean, is
Or
all
is
of it
it-
stress related? Like,
Right.
I had
the
a
stress stopped? Would
yeah.
the symptoms stop?
Because I had a professor once who categorized like psychotic breaks. She said that she was like a veteran in her career, like at the very end. So she'd been working for like decades. And she says the most people that she sees have like classic psychotic breaks where you just snap, like we see in movies, out of nowhere and just freak out, is, she says, women who are trying to have it all. And which is like, ugh, R.I.P. me as a woman. But I think that we see that with her though. So it's a psychotic break of like trying to have it all. And once she's out of that pressure, will a lot of these symptoms dissipate? Like, how much basically do we have to medicate her for psychotic symptoms? Because that will have an impact on her functioning.
Right. And also, how much trauma work needs to be done to unpair her from like trying to force herself into becoming another person? Because like when you're dealing with people who have psychosis, when they're trying to force themselves into another identity, oh man, do you have a lot of work to do with like helping people understand what is a delusion-based incident and what is actually real in you, and like helping to figure that out is a difficult blend, because you can't just flat tell people that what they're experiencing isn't real. And I know we've talked about that a lot, so I'm not going to get into a whole lot of that.
Yeah, we have.
But listen to our other episodes on psychosis for more on that. But you can't contend with the reality that people feel. You have to be present with them and help them kind of process through it because it's real to them. But figuring out like how you work with her to recognize what may be taking her in a less realistic direction. But I'll let Hannah take over from here and go through the family stuff, because wow, that's going to be a lot.
Yeah. So I think I would operate under the idea that she's been medicated somewhat, and is able, because here's the thing about doing family therapy with her and her mom. She would have to be healthy. She would have to have good coping skills. Like, I would definitely take her after she had been an individual for a while. I definitely would not probably see them right out of the hospital, because I feel like, but that's also depending on, the outcome of all the things that we've already talked about, right? So there's so many different things that would be going on. But removing her from the only caregiver she's ever had, the only support that she has, maybe her only access to insurance. I mean, like, who the fuck knows? It would be such a traumatic thing to happen that I just don't think it would be clinically a good idea. So what I think I would do, what I think I would have liked to have done is, while Nina was in the hospital, is meeting with her mom and seeing what in the fuck is going on with her first.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that, I think that would have a really big impact. Like, if mom has a personality disorder, or does she have trauma from her daughter being, severely mentally ill over the course of her, from maybe the time when she was a teenager, which is kind of what I'm guessing.
Because if mom is also isolated because she's taking care of a daughter who she could tell for years is not well,
yes,
and trying to keep that under lock and key and be everything for her, then it's also would be, like trying to,
But mom's also not treating her. She's not taking her for treatment because she thinks
doesn't
she can
want to call any attention, like wearing the shrugs when she's
There's
self-harming.
just so many different things going on. So I think what I would like to do is try to talk to mom, see if she would even come in. To be perfectly honest, I don't know that this mom would come in.
It might be a thing where certain like intensive settings require family work to be done, especially since I'm assuming Nina would be discharged into her mother's care.
Yes.
And what that would look like now
Exactly.
now that mom has a lot, if I'm looking at mom really negatively, now that mom has a lot of ammunition to even further like isolate them from the world.
Manipulate her, and mom can also reinforce her own anxiety, right? If we're talking about mom is dealing with the anxiety of having a daughter who has had severe mental illness, this idea that her daughter had to be hospitalized and hurt herself, I don't even know if her mother would be able to be present. Like, her anxiety, I feel like, would be really intense. So I think I would want to meet
and
with
her guilt.
Absolutely. Like, I think it would be just so complicated. So anyway, I would want to work with mom a little bit and just kind of get some background on mom, try to figure out if she does have a personality disorder. because that will have such a big impact on the work that I can do with Nina. So then what I would want to do is probably see Nina for a little bit individually and check in with her, see if she knows anything about boundaries, see if she has any awareness of the inappropriateness of her relationship with her mother.
Yeah.
Because I can't do family therapy with two people who don't think that anything is wrong.
True.
They're not going to come in. Like, they're not, she'd probably, like, I think you are right, Brittany. I think she would probably even be sent to like an IOP, like a step down, get discharged from the hospital to an IOP where...
Oh, for sure. She's going PhD IOP, yeah.
Which is like a intensive outpatient.
Like a day program for therapy.
Right. So you come in, and so I think through that, if they had to do family therapy, but I feel like they'd be both so tight-lipped. I feel like Nina wouldn't say anything because she'd be kind of paralyzed, and her mom, I feel like, would be so defensive. I just, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like I don't think they would come. I think if they did come, I think I would have to do some very like psychoeducational stuff first so that they could trust me, and then I could start working on the relationship, because I really feel like
it would be Nina becoming an independent person and mom being so desperate to still be in her life that she'd be willing to maybe make changes or at least respect some of the boundaries Nina is asserting.
Right. And it would be discussing what a healthy mother-daughter relationship should look like.
As an adult woman.
As an adult woman.
Yeah.
And really helping mom kind of come out of this idea that Nina is the sick little girl or is a sick teenager who needs help, and helping her really move past the idea that Nina needs her in that way, and helping her let go. So I feel like it'd be a while before I even got the two of them together in a room, except for the psychoeducational piece, which I feel like I would have them come in and say, so, the families, people who struggle with psychosis, usually having a good support system is important. I want to help make sure that you both understand kind of what happened, and kind of just even process that a little bit, again, to not focus on them in case, because again, these might be two people who think that their relationship is fine.
Well, the other thing you got to worry about here with this factor is, in addition to the stuff you're talking about here, which is all super valid and right, is we also can't forget the high performer part of this, is that we're going to have to deal with the crisis of her having reached the pinnacle of her career and having it taken away immediately.
Mm-hmm. And her identity being so wrapped up in that she might have her psychotic episode might last longer than
I think that would more spring into like a depressive state.
Maybe, but I feel probably only because her identity, again, if she's been dancing since she was 3, we're talking about somebody who only knows her life as a dancer. If you say that, like, what if ballet companies won't even talk to her because of what happened? Like, what if she can...
Insurance risk.
That's what I mean. Like, what if she can never dance again? Like, I have no idea, but I feel like even those things, and again, having her and mom come in and kind of talk about what our hopes, and helping them grieve what they thought they would have or what they thought it would be like, and helping them both shape their own, kind of like separating their identities out a little bit, and kind of like helping them each become more of, what is it called?
An individual?
Self-actualized.
Self-actualized.
Yes. None of us could say it. So that's what I think I would do. But again, just remembering that, like, I really don't know. A part of me really feels like they wouldn't come.
Well, it'd be
She's
delicate.
A flight risk too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, honestly, like, I think she would be in such crisis for, like, I need to be dancing. I have to be at rehearsal. I have to go. Like, I don't know. Like, getting her to focus on her own wellness, I think, is a huge challenge. What I was talking about, like, that multimodal thing is, like, one layer, one section at a time. Like,
you really have to figure out for Nina is what is her actual goal.
Right.
Like, what does she actually want help with? And it doesn't have to be what you as the clinician might think is, like, the quote-unquote healthiest goal. Like, it might be like, I really want to get back into dancing and be really good again.
Right.
Okay, well, then how do we get there? We have to be healthy. Like, you can
right.
flip it. You can, like, mold it a little bit to be more therapeutic, but you have to find the buy-in for her. And I think, like what you guys are saying, the buy-in might not be very healthy.
And I just don't know if it just doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like they would come. I think, is it important? Absolutely. I think that it would be a really important part of Nina getting well, or getting figuring out whatever the fuck is even going on with her, I think that it would make a really big difference. I definitely think family therapy is an important part of treatment for them. I just am not. It would take a while. Like, Nina would have to do individual, the mom would have to do individual, and then I'd be able to see them together. Sometimes, getting them right away sometimes isn't always the best thing, especially if Nina has to be stabilized, which she absolutely would have to be.
And I think for her, what I think would be a big block for family work, or even like individual work pertaining to her mom, is your mom was what you needed at sometimes. And your mom did help you be a good ballerina, if we're going to, in black and white terms. And your mom does, you don't have to vilify your mom. Yeah. To have good boundaries with your mom or to move past your relationship with your mom. I think that's where you get a lot of push to, is like, well, but if she hadn't done this, then I wouldn't have been successful. Or if, like, she's done so much for me, or she's given up so much for me. And you can, like, what I tell clients is you can have more than one feeling for a person. You can both be grateful to them for something, but also recognize the unhealthy parts of your relationship. Like, that's the big part of abusive relationships that's hard for people, is they feel like they have to hate them or be angry with them, or that they have to nullify all the good parts of their relationship. You can be like, you can both love your father and then recognize that he did really horrible things, or like, love your mother and be grateful to what she's done for you, but also recognize that it's not healthy for you anymore.
Right.
That's
and so
tricky.
and I feel like, again, the psychoeducational piece I would be doing would be talking about boundaries with them, for sure.
Yeah, this case is just so complicated, and there's so many details. There's so many what ifs about it that it's just requires so much time and patience, and require a lot of work of figuring out what is actually going on here.
Absolutely.
And my hope would be is that the people working with her, this character after this movie, that they would take the time, and that they wouldn't just like throw a bunch of antipsychotics on her, or just like one note her, basically.
Right.
That they would take the time, like you're saying, Ben, take the time to really figure out what's most helpful.
Right, because also, like, with her, like, her likelihood of medication compliance to some of the heavier antipsychotics, if she wants to dance again, is extraordinarily unlikely, because the weight gain will start, and it will start fast. And
also, your mind there's a good chance your mind will feel as clear, so it will be harder to memorize routines and, to be sharp and on your game, which you have to be to do the work she's doing at the level that she's doing it. And also just, like, being yelled at all the time by, like, teachers.
Yeah.
All right.
Needing to restrict and being constantly hungry because of the meds messing with your appetite. Yeah, there's a lot. This would be very complex and take a long time, and would really, in my opinion, require, again, like that multidisciplinary team of like assessment by a psychiatrist and a psychologist, and then a lot of work with a therapist.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So we did our best.
We did.
Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. So Natalie Portman does an amazing job in this movie.
She earned that Oscar.
Yeah, she sure
did.
She sure the fuck did. I think I've only seen this movie twice for some reason.
I think it's only the third time I've seen it too.
Yeah,
weirdly enough.
I just think it's just one that I just don't go to. Also, just because all the relationships are so bad, it's kind of painful to watch.
So wait. We have to ask the question.
I don't know.
Would you watch it again?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't feel like I don't feel an aversion to watching this movie again. I guess
you recognize that it's a good movie.
Yeah, I know that this is at least a good movie, and I would definitely. I think I would watch it again. But it just doesn't come.
It's a hard movie.
It's hard.
It is hard.
It's uncomfortable, and like I said, being a marriage and family therapist, and the relationships are so painful to watch. It would be really, again, I don't think it'd be on my first choice, but it is a really beautifully done movie. I could watch the scene where she turns into the Black Swan 1,000 times. So yeah, that's it.
I really like this movie. I was one of the requesters for us to do it, probably. Just because it's such a beautifully done movie. It's so beautifully acted. It does keep you guessing. It scares me when I watch it, which is why I argue that it is a scary movie. And yeah, it's just good. It's a good movie, guys, and I would watch it again. Though. But it's not like a fun movie. Like, it's not like let's get cozy on a Sunday afternoon and watch Black Swan. Yeah. Because I saw it in theaters, actually. Oh, wow. And the scene when she's picking at the skin on her nails, you could just feel the whole theater just like their shoulders going to their ears. Everyone's just like, stop. Like the energy is
when
like,
she has the
stop
hallucination
it.
about pulling the skin all the way off.
Woo! I mean, this movie is...
just feel that one.
This movie is made to make you uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Which is good filmmaking.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really make for a movie that you want to, like, maybe watch over and over again.
Yeah.
But no, I love Black Swan.
I also love this movie. I have it in... I bought it on Blu-ray when Blu-rays were new, and I got this... I sent you guys a picture of it, but I don't think you guys looked at the left side, just saw that the disc. When we were all watching these, we'll send each other pictures knowing we're like, hey, I'm watching it now.
Yeah. Because we're cool.
I bought this at Blockbuster.
Yeah!
Oh, fuck. That's why you said that.
That's why I sent that. Yeah, because it has the little Blockbuster logo.
Like,
R.I.P. Blockbuster.
I was like, what the fuck is this, Ben? Yeah, okay.
Which means I spent way too much money on it, because Blockbuster always cost way more than it needed to, and that's why they failed. But it was an awesome experience, and I miss it. But anyway, I think that this movie it's just such an amazing job at depicting so many multiple things at once. It shows the descent into mental illness. It also shows the effect of the incredible pressure that it takes to reach the level of perfection that it, advanced art, the high arts demand of you. I feel like
that's unhealthy.
It's unhealthy, yeah. But like the way that this movie is such an allegory for like what it takes to become that level of person is breaking yourself, basically, to put so much dedication and effort and obsession into it and passion that you lose part of yourself to it in order to become it. And that was like the theme of this movie is that she has to, in order to become the Black Swan, the pressure throughout the whole movie is you have to let go. You have to let go of all the things, all the control, all the things that make you you. And the way they showed that visually was just incredible. I didn't even catch it, and this is like the 7th time I've watched this film. Like when she's having the sex scene with Mila Kunis, like when she hits like the orgasm point, like you see like her skin start to like change and like all the bumps start to light up on her skin, and I didn't even catch that until I watched it this time.
There's a lot. It's very subtle for how bananas it is. There's a lot of subtlety in it.
There is, and the use of mirrors and lighting and the clothing she wears. She does not put on black as a dominant color.
Pink. She's the only color really in the whole movie is her wearing pink.
Right.
Her room being pink.
Well, she what I noticed is as you watch this movie and her descent into madness, her colors go from white to black with what she's wearing. And there's one point where she's wearing like this like more gray sweater when she's kind of in between. And not until like she really like embraces that Black Swan part of it does she start wearing black and going out. She's always got the white coat, the white outfit, the white shawl on over. Like sometimes she's wearing a black tutu, but there's always white.
Yeah.
And then like just the use of mirrors, colors, the lighting, just the filmmaking in this, like it earned every bit of praise and award it got, and I think it's a phenomenal film from mental health and in general, and I really like it. I also, when I watched Joker, I thought that Joker was probably pretty clearly inspired by this.
Well, Joker feels like it was inspired by
you have not seen Joker. You don't get to talk. When you go see it, I will hear your opinion on it.
Well, then we'll never talk about it.
Unless the Patreon folks hear that Brittany won't watch it unless we bribe her, basically. So
yeah,
same. Not interested.
I liked the way like it called back for me like I almost imagined as her going into this was like the fear toxin you see in Batman Begins. So like the way she turns into Black Swan. Like I thought that was a cool visual representation.
You just gotta shoehorn it in wherever you can, dude.
I'm just here to troll you. That's all.
Anyway, so there is so much going on in this movie that I'm sure we missed a bunch. Like. So if we didn't mention your favorite moment, apologies, or if a moment that you really want to discuss, you can always reach us at popcornpsychology@gmail.com and let us know if there's any parts of the movie that you notice, any things you disagree with, agree with. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at Popcorn Psychology. We're also on Twitter at popcorn_psych. Please also leave us reviews on Apple Podcasts if you can. That means a lot to us and our ability to be discoverable by other people that may not have heard of us yet. And so we will see you after the holidays.